Namaskar, good afternoon. Today is 14th July 2020 and today I wish to present one topic related to welfare concept needed in the era of COVID-19. And that will be the part of the presentation which emphasized on how we should move in the post-COVID era, especially in India. So dear friends, as we all know that earlier we used to taught each and every students about the welfare economics, and then we taught them that this is a branch of economics concerned with improving human welfare and social conditions, chiefly through the optimum distribution of wealth, the relief or reduction of unemployment, etc. This was the concept of welfare economics. And then again the term happiness comes, and the term happiness is used in the context of mental or emotional states, including positive or pleasant emotions ranging from contentment to intensify joy. And it is also used in context of life satisfaction, subjective well-being, etc. and flourishing each and every aspect of the well-being of the human in the context of human beings. And since 1960s, happiness research has been conducted in wide variety of scientific discipline. But you see the result in the era of COVID-19. Nobody got true happiness. That's why I am here to present few points that how we moved from 1776, from the era of Adam Smith. You know, dear friends, Adam Smith in 1776, who may be called as the father of economics, wrote a Wealth of Nation for the sake of growth model in the economics. And from then, in 1930s, John Maynard Keynes comes, and in 1943, Paul Ronstein and Rodin come, and then in 1974, the things revived, and Gunnar Myrdal type of economist who was a pro-poor concept of economics came, and then Lewis, Schulz, they all are Nobel laureates. In 1979, they come. And after that, in 1998, again for the sake of poverty, inequality, this concept, Professor Amartya Sen, who also got Nobel Prize in 1998, his theory comes. And then the man behind the story of globalization, who also won the Nobel Prize in 2001, Joseph Stiglitz's theory came. And then after, again, working on the poor in 2006, again Nobel laureates Muhammad Yunus concepts come in the world. So there were three phases of the academics development story, from the turning the vicious circle of poverty into virtuous cycle of growth, resulting in a diversified industrial economy and higher per capita incomes. This was a story of 1950s. And then looking beyond averages, reducing poverty, unemployment and inequality in the era of 1970s. And then in third phases, there was replacing the domination of circumstances and chance over individuals by the domination of individuals over chance and circumstances. This phase was in 1990s phase. And dear students, dear friends, the phase one was denoted by Naqsh in 1953, when he said that low productive is the problem. The economic remedy for problem is capital creation only. But then again he said, though I really agreed that non-economic remedies may be more important. So you can see the narratives of the economics, and in phase one in 1950s and 16th, the goal was economic growth. increasing GNI, GDP, etc. And the policies were capital accumulation, planning, industrialization, diversification, infrastructure investment, etc. And that era, the theories of economics called as big push theory, critical minimum effort theory, which focused on no full employment is a natural state intervention. Okay, these all were the part of phase 1, and then in phase 2 there was social dimensions growth approach by D. Sears in 1969, when he said that what is happening to poverty. He raised the question about the poverty and what has been happening to unemployment, what has been happening to inequality. If one or two of these central problems have been growing worse, especially if all three have, it would be strange to call the result development, even if per capita income has soared. So this type of things was emerging in the 1960s. There was no permanent theory of growth, as you can see from this Sears approach. And the goals was in 1970 employment, harmonization of income distribution, basic needs, which policies which focused on the policies of integral rural development, employment creation, assets distribution with the theories of informality, migration. That period was Harris and Todaro rural-urban migration theory, and there were urge of appropriate technology. So this was the period of second phase of the development story, zigzag way we are moving forward. And then third phase was Amar Sen's phase, when he focused on development as a freedom and capabilities in 1980s, and the process of economic development has to concerned with what people can or cannot do. Example, whether they can live long, escape avoidable morbidity, be well nourished, be able to read and write and communicate, take part in literary and scientific pursuit. This is called as sustains self-esteem and freedom approach by Professor Anup Sen. So story again reversed back in 1980s, when in 1990s the paradigm shift was Millennium Development Goal, and that is multidimensional, dear students. And policies was promotion of good governance and accountability, change in social and political institutions with theory from new institutional economics theories and economics of corruption. So that's where you can see from 1950 to 1990s, no stable population development theory was there, and ultimately we reached at the moment where in 21st century we set the Millennium Development Goal to eradicate extremely hunger and poverty, achieve universal primary education, promote gender equity and empower women, reduce child mortality, improve maternal mortality, combat HIV/AIDS, malaria and disease, and now at present corona comes in the list, and ensure sustainable environmental sustainability and develop a global partnership for development. So from 50s to Millennium Development Goal, we can see that no one could establish a good model of economic development which ensure true happiness for the people. And the approaches were top down versus bottom up, infrastructure versus human capacity, problem solving versus appreciative inquiry. So these are the theories running in the pages of economics books, and the recent economic development says that help people develop the capacity to use their own resources and skills to resolve their needs and improve their own lives. So from 1950s, when we are talking about capital accumulation, to now resource and skills resolvement. So these all are the story of development, and all the approaches is characterized by three goals, that is people to people, community based exchange, capacity building framework, sustainability, and promoting behavioral changes. So behavioral changes is the most important part nowadays in the COVID era, which we have to realize again and again. And then we usually talk about basic needs. We all know the traditional list of immediate basic needs is food, obvious, including water, shelter and clothing. But many modern lists emphasize the minimum level of consumption as basic needs, not just food, water, clothing and shelter, but also sanitation, education and health care. So we move basic needs like this, and the paradigmical shift in the process of development has been recognized and studied mainly because of the failure of planned economic development to improve the living condition of the poor. The process of simultaneous growth of income and continuance of poverty has left economists with no option but to think of another alternative strategy. So from 15s, we are talking of alternative strategy of development. So post-COVID era will give the alternative development model for this, which will revive whole economic theory in economics. So the most immediate solution has emerged as the state takes a lead role in the form of intervention in elevation poverty and sustained development. This was the story in mid this COVID-19, and the growth oriented approach emphasized the capital intensive modern sector demanding for a relative high level skill for the average worker, and it resulted in mere employment opportunities and widening gap between the urban and rural areas. To counteract this effect, employment oriented approach was followed with special emphasis on increasing employment in the rural and informal sectors. So as employment in these sectors is difficult to measure, the strategy shifted to anti-poverty approach, and still we are following that approach. So there are many who left out. The Indian experiences have indicated that neither of the above assumption which I told earlier turned out to be valid. As a result, a large number of people have been found to have been left out from benefiting from the fruits of economics growth, thereby resulting into poverty and deprivation. So no theory was working to remove poverty in countries like India. And most of the developing countries are still, including India, nursing the impact of vicious circle of poverty. So this is the reality which we have to realize, and then there come capability approach, social approach in social welfare. According to this capability approach, represented by the aggregating the utility levels of all individuals in societies. However, the functioning achieved by a person may not be sufficient in the determining a person's overall quality of life or well-being, and for the latter we need to know minimally the person's capability, the functioning that the person could have achieved. Hence, we may say that capability is closely related to the idea of opportunity of freedom and advantage, what Professor Ahmad Sen used to say. And according to the capability approach, in determining overall quality of life of a person, it is not enough to know what functioning he achieved. So, in the midst of this all theory, Professor Sen's capability approach was moving around. But there were many ideas. Till 1950s, till date, there was many ideas. But question remains the same. And what are those valid questions? Do people in society have the option of long and healthy life? This in the COVID era, I am raising the question, and the question remains the same, that do people in society, Indian society, the option of long and healthy life is there? Are people able to live lives free of this political oppression and social exclusion? Are people able to read and write and therefore enjoy literature and communication with others? Or do people have enough to eat and drink? The question remains same, dear students. And so there was a maximization of private cost and minimization of social cost. And no individualistic approach will solve this type of problem. And then in midst of these all, within this decade, happiness reports used to come. And the World Happiness Report is a landmark survey of the state of global happiness that rank 156 countries by how happy their citizens are. And this in the 2020 happiness report, the first time ranked cities around the world by their subjective well-being, digs more deeply into how these social, urban and natural environments combine to affect our happiness. But again, dear friends, we see that in that report India got 144th position and Finland got 1. And the measurement of that happiness index is with 10-point score. That is GDP per capita, social support, healthy life expectancy, freedom to make their choice, generosity and perception on corruption. With these measures, in 10-point scales, they used to measure the happiness index, where India comes 144th position in 2020. And this is not way to accept this type of report, because Finland or this type of country is a very small country with less population, with less diversity, and they are preparing a scale for happiness, which Indian country like India, which huge diversified state and with 1.38 billion population, how could we accept this happiness index with only three types of indicators? So this is happening day by day in the world. And in the lockdown period, in the COVID era period, we learned a lot. However, the impact of lockdown is imposed by several countries. Due to impact of COVID, we have learned a lot. And the most frequent explanation seems to be the people are pleasantly surprised by the willingness of their neighbors and their institutions to work in harness to help each other. So this is the indicator of India. This is our Gandhi's trusteeship, and this is our morality, which is never cast by global economics as an indicator. So this is our philosophical concern, that from philosophical concerns perspectives, critics argues that measuring the happiness of groups of people is misleading, because happiness is an individual matter. Just like Dalai Lama, just like Gandhi, just as our Kotil, just as our J.K. Mehta used to say, this is individual choice. It is structure enabling the disenabling condition and not something to be measured using variables that can only capture nations' well-being. This means, therefore, that one cannot really talk of a happy or unhappy nation, but of happy or unhappy individuals. So this is our strong opinion with this, and we don't like this in 10-point scaling index for the sake of India, because we are a country of Advait Vedanta Hindutva, great Hindutva nations, where ultimate goal of life is happiness in the sense of duality between Atma and Brahma is transcended, and one realizes oneself to be self in all. So we are this type of people. Even Buddhism here used to say in its Noble Eightfold Path that happiness forms a central theme of our life. So this is the country, different type of country, where scale should be different type of skills. And in this COVID era, we know, according to WHO, that health is a state of complete physical, mental and social well-being, not merely the absence of disease. So this, as a healthcare economics, we have to focus on these issues, and we should know about illness and about wellness, difference between illness and wellness. Our wellness is state of mind. So the impact overall in COVID area is alarming. Lot of people are dying around the globe, but India managed to control the death rates and mortality rates. But still our concern is there, because due to diabetes, due to malaria, due to environmental degradation, in India also death used to happen each and every year. Annually, globally, beyond this COVID era, strokes, heart disease, injuries, cancers, diarrheal disease are killing the people. These are the free facts. So we should think of the limitless growth when we have to search the ultimate solution. Limitless growth is a fantasy of economists, business and politicians. It is seen as a measure of progress, which is not. This lockdown has shown. As a result, gross domestic product that we called, economists called as GDP, which is supposed to measure the wealth of nation, has emerged as both the most powerful number and dominant concept in our times. However, economic growth hides the poverty it creates through the destructions of nature, which in turn leads to communities lacking the capacity to provide themselves. And the concept of growth was put forward as a measure to mobilize resources during this Second World War. So we will not trap in this model, and GDP based on creating an artificial and fictitious boundary, assuming that if you produce what you consume, you do not produce. And in fact, dear friends, growth measures the conversion of nature into cash and commons into commodities, which is not good model. So we have to we should return to the root. When we define the definition of economics as oikonomics, that means oikonomics called as nature, and that is called in Greek word, that is called a family. So we must recognize the family as a unit and also nature as a unit. As long as we economists was focused on the household, it recognized and respected its basic natural resources and the limits of ecological renewal. So think over that. We should think over that. And globalization is melting. So we should think over that and be self-reliant economy. Really, vocal is a solution for India, and we have to move forward with our own concept, where our Goswami Tulsidas used to say, Chit Jal Pavak Gagan Samhita Panch Rachit Ati Adham Sharira. We have to preserve these 5 elements of the whole economics as well as body essence. And thank you that you have listened this view in the midst of COVID-19. And again I am repeating that our parameter is culture, belief, lifestyle, festivals and rituals. And of course we appreciate the worthlessness theory of Professor Mehta, because we know our motive of economics is Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina, Sarve Santu Niramya, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschid Dukha Bhagavet. Thank you, dear friends. Namaskar. Goodbye.